It's a little after 5 minutes past 12. I was chatting to my guests here, so I apologise. I've got a bit of echo on the microphone, so if I go into funny mode, you'll know what's going on. Welcome. This is Stubbsy here at Roach Valley Radio. It's lunchtimes with me, Monday to Friday. Today, I'm really delighted to welcome two guests into the studio. I've got Hopwood DePree and Pam Taylor. Now, for those of you who don't know about Hopwood and Pam, it's a fascinating story. It's about Hopwood Hall. Now, it's a hidden gem, I would say. It's a building that's a hidden gem in Middleton, and not a lot of people know about it. And those that do know about it, well, you may not know exactly what's been going on. So I'm not going to talk too much about it at the moment. I'm going to let both Hopwood and Pam tell the stories as we go along. So welcome, guys. Thank you for coming to Roach Valley Radio. It's a pleasure for me to have this chance to talk to you and for you to be able to give us, shall we say, your side of the story as to what's been going on, because there is obviously a lot of controversy. Pam, I'd like to start with you. Why should people care about the Hall? What is it about the Hall itself and its history that is so important to Middleton?
It's been in my family ever since I was a baby, really. Mum used to work there during the war for the Lancashire Cotton Corporation, and Mum and Dad always used to take me through Hopwood Woods. We used to peep through at the Hall. Always loved the place. Mum absolutely loved her time there. It's a beautiful old building, and when you think that people are travelling miles to look at ancient halls that have been restored, it seems such a pity that we're losing one of our own assets. It's it's a really good asset for Middleton.
Hopwood, you found out about the Hall when you were young? Was it when your grandfather, or was it your father, told you about it?
Yes, my grandfather, actually. So I grew up with the name Hopwood, hated the name as a child, but he was also named Hopwood, and he used to tell me these bedtime stories about a Hopwood castle. And I always just thought they were fairy tales. I never thought it was a real place. So I was aware that maybe something like that existed or had existed hundreds of years ago, but I didn't think it was still around.
So what piqued your interest? What happened? Because obviously, you're now in Middleton. So what was there a catalyst, or was there a series of events? What occurred that and it made you want to investigate further, and in fact, come all the way from the States to Middleton?
Well, actually, my father passed away, and my grandfather passed away in a very short amount of time. And like a lot of people who experience loss, I think that you go back and try to look at something maybe that you know. And my grandfather had always been interested in our family genealogy. So I was on Ancestry.com looking at that, and I came across a black and white picture, an aerial view of Hopwood Hall that had been taken in the 1950s. And when I saw it, I immediately knew. I said, wow, that has to be the place that he had talked about when I was a boy. And it was one of those moments that just struck me and made me feel it was the path ahead of me, that I needed to follow that, because I had been searching for something deeper. I was living in Los Angeles and working in the entertainment business at the time, and I was looking for something deeper in life. And so I felt like that was a sign. And so I found an email address that was to the local council, to Rochdale Council, and I sent an email, and I went to bed. By the time I woke up the next morning, I had emails back, and one of which was from a local historian, Jeff Wellens, who said, "When are you coming to England?" And that was in 2013. So I just came over for an initial visit just to see Hopwood Hall, and that's changed my life.
Now, we'll come on to what happened, because it wasn't a case of you arrived in England and then you were given the keys to the Hall. There was it's a little bit more than that. I just want to go back a little bit further, because why is the Hall important to you two guys, Pam and Hopwood? What is it about the Hall, and why is it? I suppose am I right in that it was empty for 30 years before you guys went in there and started working in it? I mean, what is it about the Hall that's important?
It's just too beautiful a building to lose. It should never have been left for 30 years. It's an absolute asset. We've got so little heritage left in Middleton. All the old halls have been demolished. We're just losing it rapidly. and it just seemed a shame that this was our last chance to save this hall. It was great when Hopwood showed interest.
So what? I mean, let's go back to the maybe Hopwood. You can fill in the blanks. And in terms of the history of the hall, what is it that's so significant about the hall that people should be interested, if you like, and not saying, well, hang on a minute, I'd rather money go towards picking the bins up every week rather than restoring an old pile. Well, it's not an old pile of bricks. We know that, but restoring a building as such.
Well, it's a grade 2 star listed building, which means it's in the top 5% of the most important structures in the country. And it's a real treasure to have that right here in the Northwest. And it goes back to the 1400s. It's got a long history. In fact, Guy Fawkes stopped there on his way to the Houses of Parliament. And Lord Byron wrote his most famous poem while he was staying there. And it said that Chopin even played there. So it has a long history, and in the 1700s, Hopwood Hall Estate actually employed more residents, more staff than the entire population of Middleton. So many people who are still there today helped their ancestors help build that estate and help power it and help make it what it is. So it's very important to people's heritage that we keep this going.
Do you have a theory why it is there is such a lack of awareness about the hall? Is there a particular reason why that is, or is it a combination of reasons?
Well, maybe locally it doesn't have much notice, but internationally we have people who are supporting us all around the world. So I think it does have quite a notice. There's been a story in the New York Times about it and USA Today. So there's certainly quite a large following that's really been supportive and helpful as we've been moving forward. I think it's one of those properties that's out of sight, out of mind. It's not a historic building that's easy to view. It hasn't had public access for about 3 decades, as you said. It's tucked behind Hopwood Hall College.
I was about to ask you, explain where it was, because people in Middleton may not have an idea of where it is.
So it's just off Rochdale Road behind Hopwood Hall College's Middleton campus. And I think when a lot of people hear Hopwood Hall, they think it's the college, and they don't realize that there's still an old hall there behind the college there that the college was named after. So that may be that it's some confusion, but if you don't see the building and you don't have public access to it for 30 years, people forget, and that is the reason why it's been such a challenge, is not having this access, and while it's fallen into dereliction over the past 3 decades.
Right, that's really interesting. We're going to have a short break. We're just going to play a tune. I asked the guys to select, because it saves me the job. I've asked them to pick out a few songs. And I'm going to start with That's What Friends Are For, which is Dionne Warwick, which is one of your choices, Pam. Any particular reason why? You just like the song, or?
I quite like the song, but also the fact that the volunteers have become such good friends, and we're all supporting each other during this time when we're all very upset about the way we've been treated.
Right. Well,
and it's keeping us together.
That's good. What we'll do is we'll come on, because it'd be very interesting to find out what the volunteers were doing, and obviously what the volunteers have done since the controversial lockout. I think that's the best way to describe it, in November. But we'll come on to that in a few minutes.
This is Roach Valley Radio.
You listen to Roach Valley Radio. This is Stubbsy at lunchtime. I have with me my special guests for today, Hopwood DePree and Pam Taylor. We're talking about everything to do with Hopwood Hall, and it's just carrying on from what we were talking about, guys. I'm curious as to the hall was occupied by the monks. Excuse my lack of knowledge. Just explain a little bit about that and what it was. It was a training college, wasn't it?
It was a Catholic teacher training college, and it was run by the De La Salle brothers.
Ah, that's it, yeah.
And they were very nice. I mean, we used to walk through the grounds as a family. They never challenged us. We knew it was private land, but they were always welcoming, never any problems. Everybody sort of spoke highly of them. But then they left. I think it was in 1989, I think it was.
Yes, late 80s.
And then the council took over.
Right. And what did they do? Because am I right in saying that the hall wasn't occupied at all for 30 years until you guys went in and started doing your work?
No, it was completely neglected. Nobody was in. It wasn't used for anything. there was a caretaker, Bob Wall, that used to go in just to do like emergency repairs.
So what were the plans? Well, I say what were the plans? Were there plans? Did the council have plans?
There were numerous attempts, about 5 attempts, as I understand, to try to do something commercial with the hall. At one point, it was even up for sale. And all of those failed because the problem is when the council took control of the hall and the land, they ended up drawing a line around the hall, basically, and made it looks to be landlocked, or at least there's some question about was it or is it not landlocked. So that was very difficult for any commercial entity to develop there that could sustain the hall. So it was closed up, at some point boarded up, and vandals broke in. Vandals got on the roof, stole the lead, water started pouring in, and approximately 10 million pounds plus of damage was caused.
So was that? Are you saying that damage was caused in that ensuing 30 years? I mean, what was the condition
Correct.
of the hall?
So in the late 80s, as Pam said, after the De La Salle brothers left, then the Rochdale Council took ownership of it. And over that period is when it fell into complete dereliction.
Right. Okay.
And so there had been a number of attempts. I actually came here in 2013 just to see it. And when I walked through it, I was absolutely shocked at the state of the hall. There was water running down the walls. We could hear pieces of plaster falling in different rooms. There were full wings that were collapsed. You couldn't even go in them. So it had really become a massive destructive site. And coming from America, where buildings don't even go back that far. This is from the 1420s. To look at water running down these carvings was shocking to me, and my family was there at the time.
I was thinking about you celebrate old buildings, don't you? Do you have
Yeah,
parades and things?
Something from
Well, I say old,
1899
but,
would have a plaque and a band out there, and it would be a big deal. So that's what we just couldn't wrap our heads around. How could this building from the 1420s be left to rack and ruin and nothing being done? So we felt we have to get involved. What can we help fundraise? What can we do to help save this building? And also was the local community, everybody that I met and talked to was so passionate about rescuing Hopwood Hall. And many of them had even tried. They'd formed a friends group. They had even made proposals, but none of that had actually progressed any further due to the lack of access. So talking to the community and hearing the passion from them and how much people wanted to save this, we felt like this is something we could do. We could get involved and help save it. And that's what happened. It took a number of years. There was a few more proposals. The Hopwood Hall College at the time in 2014 had a hotel proposal where students were going to be trained to learn hospitality skills.
So sorry to interrupt, Hopwood, but there's a 4-year gap, isn't there, between when you first came to Middleton and when you actually, shall we say, as I call it, you were given the keys to the hall. So what was going on in those? What were you just coming back and visiting?
Yes, multiple back and forth trips.
Right.
Several times a year, and keeping involved from afar. But at the time, I lived in Los Angeles. I had an entire life there and a house and jobs. So it wasn't until later, after the college couldn't get funding and they abandoned the project of saving the hall, that I decided the council actually came to me and said, would you consider
the council came to you? Because I think a lot of people think that you approached the council.
Correct. Yes, I was actually just helping out from afar, just trying to support the Hopwood Hall College in their endeavor to turn it into a hotel for students. And everybody thought that is the last hope for Hopwood Hall. It's going to be lost forever if nothing is done. So when they abandoned that, I spoke to the then leader of the council and said, would you consider spearheading this? And so I really had to think long and hard, because I knew that if I did that, it's not something I could do from afar. I knew it was something where I'd have to give up my current life in Los Angeles and move over full time, get a UK visa. I'd have to do all of those things.
Well, hang on a minute. What was your background? What were your skills to be able to do that?
Well, I'd done some remodeling.
I hope I'm not being rude, but I mean,
no, absolutely. I had remodeled kitchens and bathrooms.
Oh.
But background really was producing films, and also I produced a large-scale lifestyle event of a film festival. So I had experience in managing different groups of people, managing financing, bringing in fundraising, creating community engagement programs. So having all that behind me, it felt like, wow, this is something I could do. I could help mobilize the troops and help bring in funding and go out there and really help try to raise awareness.
Sort
and
of
meet with the grant funders.
project management in
Yeah,
effect.
Exactly,
Yeah.
project management, or very, which is very similar to producing a film. So I came to the conclusion that I had to do this because when I first came through Hopwood Hall, they said to me that if nothing's done in 5 to 10 years, the hall will fall down, be lost forever. And I knew that if I didn't do something, that would be a major regret to have this incredible building collapse when the community wanted to save it. So in 2017, I got my visa and moved over full time to the UK to spearhead this as a volunteer and to help bring it back into use.
So what did you do about your business and the work you were involved in the States?
I gave it all up. I left everything behind and made this major
That's quite a
jump.
commitment. That's quite a commitment for anyone to make for a building.
Yeah, but it was more than just the building. It really was the community. I met so many people, and so many people that were saying to me they just wanted to see this building saved before they passed away. And it really meant something to them. They grew up around Hopwood Hall. They had seen it as children. They considered it a magical building. And it was the same magic that I felt when I first walked into the building. It's not just a building. It has an energy about it that is inspiring and brings people together. And as we researched the history, we found that there's a long evidence of this, of people coming from far and wide to stay at the building with creative spirit, and the Hopwood family who lived there inviting the community in on a regular basis, dating back centuries. So this has always been a community hub, and it was crying out to be a community hub once again, and so we felt we could do it.
I'd like to move on. I'm going to play a tune. I'm going to play one of the tunes that Hopwood has selected, and we'll play that in a moment. Before I do, I'm losing my train of thought. There's so many questions I've got in my head. No, it's gone. It's gone. This is what happens. I started the train of thought, and then it completely goes. Oh yes, the question I wanted to ask you is when you took on the hall, and we'll come on to what you've achieved and what the if you like the ups and the downs and everything else. But when you took on the hall, I assume you entered an agreement with the local council. Can you explain to me what that agreement contained? What in fact, if you like, the rules and regulations that you had to follow.
Yes, correct. It's a contractual agreement. It was drafted by the council. I hired a lawyer at the time. And basically, it said that we needed to achieve planning permission to turn Hopwood Hall into a specialty arts hospitality venue, and also offer training facility on the property. And so that's really what we set in motion.
So they signed. So the council signed off that you were happy with all that contract as such that was presented to you.
Correct, and that's what we set out to do. We were given a very specific guideline that's in black and white in a contract of what this needed to be. And so in 2017, once we signed the contract, that's what we set off doing.
Great.
Working with the community, working with heritage experts.
I want to ask you about a neighbour, because there's a fascinating story in your book which refers to the access to the hall, and it made me smile because it had a happy ending in effect. But the neighbour that your descendants, your ancestors, I beg your pardon, had a feud with, which continued for quite a long time, but had as I say, sort of a happy ending. Could you just tell us about that?
Well, that really was a character. So when you write a book, I wrote this book, Downton Shabby, which is basically my memoir of moving from Los Angeles to Rochdale Borough to save Hopwood Hall. And in it, I had to somehow come up with a way to explain the lack of access, which is because of Hopwood Hall College. So that character in the book is actually a composite character,
Oh.
which is allowed
Oh,
to
you've
happen.
spoiled it for
Yeah,
me.
sorry.
You
It's
really
not a-
have spoiled it for me now.
So it's a composite character. I did that at the suggestion of my editor. So often in a book or a memoir, if there's 3 or 4 characters that are similar, they'll have the author combine it into one, so that there's a limited number of characters. So that character with the land and the access is actually
You've ruined my
Hopwood
day.
Hall College.
Hopwood, you've ruined my day.
Sorry.
I just said I must meet this man. I must meet this man. I'll leave you to read that, listeners. I'll leave you to read the book. It's Downton Shabby, and you can find out all about Phineas Shelburne. I think is that the name?
Yeah.
Is that the name?
Yes.
Right. Okay. We're gonna have another break. We'll have another song now, and this is another a Hopwood song. We'll come to that in a minute. Then I would like to move on, if I may, to what happened in November last year and how things changed, and possibly if you're able to tell us why you think things changed. We're moving on to when, so it's 2017, you've been given the keys to the castle. I know it's not a castle, but it's a we'll use that expression. What did you do first?
One of the first things we did was we wanted to get the hall open. People had been wanting to get in there for 30 years. So I moved here in mid-August of 2017. And by the end of the first week of September, we had the hall open. And we had 600 people on the waiting list to show up. We were allowed to have 100 people in. We opened with the Heritage Open Day program. And it was so exciting because there were so many people that had wanting to see the building for ages, and we just wanted to let these people in safely, obviously. So we spent the next few weeks really shoveling mud and making sure that the areas that they could go were safe. There was only a couple of rooms that were determined to be structurally sound, but it was a chance for people to come in, to meet people, and to really launch this mission to save the hall and to build support.
What were the reactions at the time? I mean, I'm thinking locally as well as, far and wide. How did people react to that?
Well, it was an exciting time, but there was also a lot of upset, and tears were actually shed. People that had seen the hall in the state that it was in the 1980s, and then seeing it how it was in 2017. There was a lot of upset, but also what we kept saying is, we're starting now, right? We're going to reverse the clock. We're going to bring this place back. Do you want to join our friends group? We started another friends group, different from the one that had been started years before that, and that was, and with a lot of those original members joining and rebooting that friends group that had been there for decades and trying to bring it back. And we were just amazed that how many people locally got behind it and were on the waiting list. We couldn't let everybody in, but we knew that there was this incredible passion. And it also got national media coverage. The Telegraph picked it up, as well as the regional stations, and it really helped boost the awareness in terms of what we were trying to do, and had all sorts of people come out of the woodwork in the community saying, how can we help? Can we donate tools? Can we donate money? Can we get involved? And
is that when the volunteers group was set up then, at the beginning?
Yes, that was at the beginning. So I think we officially formed, it was all happened quite quickly. That was in September of 2017. By November of 2017, we had our first Friends of Hopwood Hall Estate meeting, and that was super well attended, and everyone was there, and many of those people are still part of our group, so it's been a long term.
Pam, are you one of the originals?
We were one of the originals, yes, me and my husband. And
so why did you get involved?
Well, mainly because of Mum's connection to the hall. And when she was on her way out, she was dying, I promised her I would definitely get involved in any volunteer groups, because she'd heard about Hopwood through the national press and the Middleton Guardian, the newspaper, it was mentioned. And I said, I'll definitely get involved, because it was her dream to see it restored, and mine.
Yeah, so tell me what has the volunteer group done at the hall? What did you get involved in?
Well, when we first asked if we could start in the gardens, even though it wasn't safe to go in the hall, we thought, well, if we can just improve the look outside, maybe it would start to look cared for, stop some of the vandalism. And it was amazing because that's when the vandalism stopped.
Interesting.
Within months of clearing all the overgrown grass, digging out old tree stumps, just making it look cared for.
You've am I right that you've received awards from the RHS for the gardens?
Yes, we've won 3 years on the run.
Oh wow!
And the first one we got, we were the only ones to win it at first time entry.
Wow,
and we were shocked.
That's incredible.
And it was a level 5
level
outstanding.
5
yeah.
outstanding.
Can you explain what a
yes.
level 5 is?
It's the top award
Right.
for in your neighbourhood.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we were really pleased. We hadn't even thought about entering at first, but then friends that were in Middleton in Bloom suggested we applied to enter.
Yeah.
And I said, do you really think we can? And of course you can. And of course it made us more determined than ever to do our best. And we bought our own plants, we raided our own gardens, we put out on social media anybody, donating any shrubs they don't want and cuttings. And it was amazing. And then we got all the offers of tools, equipment. It was just fantastic.
Hopwood, what happened then in regards to inside the hall? So what in the 7 years since you've taken over, what have you achieved? Has it matched your expectations in terms of achievements? Because it must be, it's been a long journey, hasn't it?
It's been an incredibly long journey, but anyone who works on rescuing a historic building like this knows that it's a long journey. But we made incredible progress despite some significant challenges, the most being the lack of access to the hall. This lack of public access, you can't get to the hall without going through the Hopwood Hall College campus. That presents a whole bunch of different problems. So given all of that, and also the pandemic in there, and also all the delays that happened at the council, we made major progress. We were able to get the top grant funders on board, bringing in money to get behind it. We brought in personal, private investment. We were getting everybody on board to really get Hopwood Hall back into use. We had heritage skills training programs where we were training local people to make leaded glass windows. In fact, one local woman who had never made a leaded glass window in her life came in and she made over 100 windows that are now placed back in the hall. So we had made massive progress. We had an archive club. In addition to the gardening club, we have an archive club that was collecting old photographs and documents and records that have all come back to the hall. We had a restoration club that was helping to do jobs that they could do to help seal leaks and fix things and board up areas that maybe pests or rodents were getting in, really start to bring the hall back and save it. And there's so much care that goes into that. And we also had international people helping with other areas as well. So the volunteers really were spread far and wide. And I think that was so exciting to see this kind of local and international approach to sort of saving the building.
There's one thing I wanted to ask you, which is regarding the actual funding of the projects. Because reading what the Rochdale Council have said about you and the work that's going on, there's been an intimation, and maybe I've got this wrong, that the council have in fact been responsible for generating the funds that have been responsible for these works. I mean, what do you say about that?
Well, additionally, we were working very closely with the council as a partner. That was always our intention, my intention, a trusted partner. So I think something changed along there, but we were incredibly involved. I helped found the Hopwood Foundation charity in 2020, and with a great board of trustees, very highly accomplished board of trustees. And we were incredibly involved in this funding that was coming in. And in fact, we wrote a grant to National Lottery and got £250,000 from National Lottery.
Sorry, are you saying that your team, shall we say, created that grant application and it wasn't the council?
That's 100% correct. Okay. I wrote it with my sister, and we spent 2.5 years writing that grant to National Lottery. And anyone who writes a grant knows how much work goes into it, and it was also a lot of meetings with National Lottery, a lot of consultation. That's why it took 2.5 years to write that grant, because it's a highly, highly competitive grant. So yes, it's interesting because recently the council was in a meeting saying that they wrote that grant and they submitted it, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Why do you think they're doing that? Okay, okay. Let's should we move on a little bit? I think we can. I think you can probably get from Hopwood's reaction what the answer might be. I'd like to move on, if I may, guys, to last year. Now, in November 2017, for anyone who's listening doesn't know, Hopwood and his team were locked out of the hall by Rochdale Council. They said that you essentially had not provided a business plan, I believe, so in a sense was not fulfilling the side of the contract. Before we talk about that, I'd like to just go back slightly the previous months. And what was your relationship like with the council? Had there been any signs that they were unhappy with what you were doing? What was their overall, should we say, impression of the work that you'd been doing?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, I think it was November of 2024, right? Yeah, I think you said 2017.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just
I beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, we've been saying a lot about 2017.
I've got all this stuff going through my head. I do apologize.
So November of 2024. So up until we received a grant in November of 2023, a £250,000 grant for community engagement and to make the hall safe and accessible so the public could come in, was to open a gift shop, to have a mini theater so that school trips could come in and have a history lesson. So that was a really exciting thing. And that was the application, the grant application that I mentioned that the Hopwood Foundation filled out and submitted and was successful at getting. But that's really when things changed, when that grant was awarded to us, because I think it was the first time the funding was actually going to the charity rather than to the council. And at that point, a consultant came in that was hired by Rochdale Council, as I understand it, who worked for Rochdale Development Agency. And that was really when the dynamic changed, and it was became challenging. So that was a year before the lockout. But it wasn't anything we didn't think we could work through. So that grant was then delayed to be delivered. And while we tried to work through it over the next year, really, there was a number of different opinions about how the funding should go, and back and forth. So that was becoming somewhat challenging over that year. But leading up to the lockout, there was no warning that would happen. In fact, we had been in communication with the council. We were going to talk about how we could work together, to deliver this grant. They asked us to propose how it would work. So me and the board of trustees of our charity worked a long time on putting together a proposal for them and emailed that to them. And we're basically waiting for an answer back. And it just was really silence from them. There was nothing happening. So they kept saying they're trying to get more information, very short responses, but not really telling us anything or being honest with us about what was going on behind the scenes. So that led up to the end of October, early November, where we got a phone call from a journalist saying, do you have a comment on the fact that Rochdale Council has decided to end this agreement with you, the agreement that I had signed, or renege on the agreement that I had signed in 2017, which was a surprise to me because I thought for sure we had made so much progress and we had all this funding lined up, not just the $250,000, but we had another £100,000 for heritage skills training to put more windows into the hall, and we were going to work with local students and try to train people and give them jobs and opportunities, but also make the hall watertight. So I couldn't believe it when we got that call, and the journalist told us that he had been given the story by the council. And so instead of coming to me or us directly and sitting down and having a discussion about this, they just sprung it on us in this way, which was an absolute shock. And about a week later, a few days later, they locked us out, bolted the gates, padlocked it, cut our locks off of there and put their locks on there, posted signs and sent us a letter saying that forbidding us to enter the premises.
It was terrible.
Well, I was going to ask you, Pam, how do you feel about this?
I was conscious of Hopwood's frustrations in that last year. You could tell. I kept saying, what's happening now? And you could tell, still haven't arranged a meeting. They've delayed again. And we were all aware of his frustrations. But then when we found out that they'd terminated this agreement with no warning whatsoever, the volunteers were just couldn't believe it. And the way he'd found out, not even a personal thing, and there was no discussion whatsoever with us. Nobody came into the hall to say why we might not be allowed in. It was literally, we were there on the Tuesday working, doing our own things, gardening, archives, DIY, and then the Thursday planning to go in again, and gates locked, different keys. And the college was saying they couldn't allow us in. We might, we were considered a risk. Well, not a risk, but she had to consider the health and safety of students. But I'd been there 5 years. No incidents whatsoever.
So what you're saying is that there were a number of contradictory announcements, should we say, from both the college and the council.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the sad thing is so many of our volunteers have come to us for mental health and well-being issues, and they really depend on this as a weekly meeting point. It's a way to get active, to get out in the outdoors, to really manage their mental health. And the way that Rochdale Council handled this was absolutely shocking and sent many of them into deep depression, into a tailspin. I mean, to lock somebody out in such a dramatic fashion from the work that they've contributed 5 years of their life, 2 days a week, and to just say, no, you can't come in here anymore was one of the most upsetting things to me, because I want to defend these people. And I just think, well, how could you treat your community residents this horribly? How can you do this? How is that possible that anybody could make that decision? If you have an issue with me, then let's sit down and talk about it, but don't take it out on the local community who has poured their heart and soul into this project. Don't do that.
Sorry. It seems incredulous to me that they dealt with you and the volunteers in that way. Have they?
I couldn't believe it.
Have they made any contact with the volunteers group?
No.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
Right.
The only person that has recently was our MP, Elsie Blundell. She asked for a meeting at the local library, and I think it was 5 of us went along. And she was very sympathetic, very pleasant. And she did offer to try and arrange a mediation meeting with Neil Emmett himself.
That's the council leader.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt it was over 3 months since we were locked out. I felt that time had passed, and no, I'm sorry. I felt it was the wrong time. Mediation should have been done straight away.
Well, and we've filed for freedom of information from the council to understand how these decisions were made. There was apparently some report that was presented to the council cabinet that we never saw. We never had a chance to get up and speak about it or to defend ourselves. Nothing. I've never seen this report that apparently this decision was based upon. So
you've not had the opportunity to go in front of people at the council and discuss this with them.
Absolutely
Is that what
not.
you're saying?
No chance to go in front of the cabinet. No, nothing. Just a report that was presented that we don't. If you look up the minutes about this date of this decision being made, there's hardly anything on there. It's all hidden. So we filed a freedom of information. Our legal team filed a freedom of information request for that report and other minutes, and that was denied by Rochdale Council. They filed it again, and that was denied a second time.
Interesting. Just running out of time, and there's so much I want to talk about. Unfortunately, I'd love you to come back again, at some point in the future with hopefully better news. But from this moment in time, what does the future hold for both you, Hopwood, and also the volunteers group? Where do you stand?
I think we're still very positive because we're so convinced that council are in the wrong. They said there was not enough progress made. The progress was there for everybody to see. And the same people, those same councillors, had been to open days and praised in public the progress made by Hopwood and his volunteer team. And yet, a few weeks down the lane, they're saying there's nothing.
Right. Hopwood?
Well, and we're getting reports from what the hall looks like now since we've been locked out, and people are saying it's falling back into wreck and ruin, that there's garden furniture thrown across the lawn, the plants are dying. So it's just reversing itself back, and we're determined to get back. We've hired an incredible legal team who's going to fight this every step of the way. And the Rochdale Council is going to have to answer, how was this decision made? And I'd like to see a full investigation of Rochdale Council, Rochdale Development Agency, and Hopwood Hall College to understand this, because it's an absolute, I don't even have words for it. It's just shocking. It's an absolute shocking situation. And how long are people going to stand for it? So many people have come up to me since this has gone public, and it's not just this one incident. It's thing after thing after thing after thing that you're hearing about from the council. I haven't heard one positive thing. Everybody comes up to me and tells me their nightmare story. And how long will people stand for this? How long? I'm certainly not going to stand for it, and our legal team is certainly not going to stand for it. So I have high hopes for the future.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to you in a moment.
This is Roach Valley Radio.
I want to end our chat the way we did. There's so much to, and I think Hopwood was getting, you were on the wave, weren't you? You were on a wave. Besides saying thank you so much for coming in today, it's been fascinating chatting with you. I just wanted to ask you as a sort of a final question is, what's your hope for the future?
Definitely to get back with Hopwood at the helm. Nobody else.
Hopwood?
He's got the passion, the drive, the enthusiasm, and the volunteers. It rubs off on them. It's just become a second home to all of us. We want to treat it as ours for the community. Not just for certain sections of the community, for everybody. Hopwood's so welcoming for everybody. He's made connections with schools, the Redwood School. It's been lovely.
Well, he's devoted his life, haven't you? You've given up everything to come over here, and that is a fact. That's not just an opinion.
No, it's true. And it annoys me intensely to think that my local town has treated him in this way.
But is it your local town, or is it certain individuals?
I feel it's my local town and my local history.
Okay.
And I want it safe for the community. And Hopwood's the one to do it.
Thank you, Pam. Hopwood?
Thanks, Pam. And I think it's a handful of people that have made this decision. A few people. I mean, the people I've met in Middleton and Rochdale Borough have been incredible, and Greater Manchester for that matter. It's been incredibly welcoming, supportive, 99.9999% incredible. So this isn't aimed at people, and there's great people within Rochdale Council as well. I mean, really amazing counselors that have emailed us and say, hang in there, keep with it, stick with it. So I really do think it's a handful of people. So my hope is that we can come to some sort of resolution. We can move beyond this. Those people that are against us will step aside, and we'll be able to deliver Hopwood Hall with the vision that we've had. And anybody can watch. There's an 8-minute video on our YouTube channel that people can watch and see what our vision is for the future. And that's to open it for all to enjoy and to make it a community hub like it has been for centuries.
Thank you, Hopwood. Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
I'd be delighted if you could pop in at some point in the future, and hopefully then we've got some good news to discuss.
Positive news.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.